Thank you all for joining. This is now being recorded. And welcome to today's webinar. This is supporting ESA claimants who are moving to universal credit and how to avoid the pitfalls. This is brought to you by Quidzin Professional Network and Money Guiders Wales Network. Hopefully most of you are members of both, but if not, there will be links at the end and also in the follow-up information so that you can sign up for anybody who isn't signed up already. So I'd like to start by introducing Caitlin from the Money Guiders Wales Network and invite her to say a few words.
Good morning, thanks, Lisa, and hi everybody. So yeah, as Lisa mentioned, this session is brought to you today as part of the Money Guiders Wales Network in collaboration with Clean Slate. So just to give you a brief overview of the Money Guiders Wales Network, if this is your first time at one of our sessions, the Wales Network is a part of the Money Guiders community, and that's formed of 4 networks across the UK. So we've got similar networks running in England, Northern Ireland and Scotland as well. And this community of practice is an element of the Money Guiders programme, which is run by the Money and Pension Service. So this service was set up and designed so that when practitioners are having conversations with their clients about money, that they'd be able to feel confident having those conversations and ultimately be giving good quality money guidance. So one of the ways that we do that is by offering a programme of free sessions and events, a bit like this one today, that delve into key topics that are found within our money guidance competency framework. So this is a framework that outlines the key competencies that you need to have in order to be giving good quality money guidance. And then from this framework, we've also developed our e-learning, and this takes you through each of those topics in detail. So within the learning at the moment, there are currently over 20 hours of self-guided learning available that you can do in your own time. And here you'll also have the opportunity to earn a City and Guilds endorsed credential that comes in the form of a digital badge as well. You just need to pass the assessment at the end of the learning. So if that was something that you're interested in, you can drop me an email. I'll share my email address with you after the session in the follow-up email, and we can get you registered on there as well if that was something that you were interested in. And then just a final note from me is just an ask or a plea to complete the feedback form that will circulate at the end of the session. So we do say that even if you've completed it before, if you've been to a session previously, it really is helpful for us to know how each individual session has gone and how we can improve in the future. And there's also space as well for you to let us know about the topics and the sessions that you'd like to see in the network as well. So that really helps us to program the events calendar across the whole year. So I'll pop a link into our events calendar in the chat too, so you can take a look at the other things we've got coming up. We say that the sessions run by each of the networks, but if they look relevant to you, if you're based in England or want to go to a Scotland event, if it looks relevant, you're absolutely welcome to go along to that one. So yeah, that was a quick whistle-stop tour of the Money Guiders programme. I'll hand back over to Lisa and Jeff and Megan now to make a start on the session. Thanks, Lisa.
No worries, thanks Caitlin. And yes, as Caitlin mentioned, we will be sharing the feedback form link in the chat, so please do fill that out at the end. It's really helpful. Okay, so for this webinar, I'm going to give a short introduction to Clean Slate Training and Employment, which is home to Quidzin. Then I'm going to hand over to Megan Meeke, who runs Welfare Training Wales and is also a Quidzin trainer. She will explain where we are at with the move to UC for ESA claimants. We will then hand over to Jeff Mitchell, who is the founder and managing director of Clean Slate, who will present some of our findings from our recent Quidzin reader survey, cost of living survey, which clearly illustrates what claimants are up against and also looking at the road ahead. Okay, so let us begin. And as I say, I think I said earlier, but just in case you missed it, if you have any questions as we're going through, please write them in the chat and we will come to them at the end. Great. So can everyone see that presentation? Yep, all good. Okay, need to go back to the beginning, bear with me. Okay. So, avoiding the pitfalls, supporting ESA claimants who are moving to UC. So Clean Slate was founded in 2006 by Jeff Mitchell as a way of supporting people furthest from the job market back into training and employment. Jeff's previous role had been as managing director of The Big Issue, and so used that experience of supporting people with barriers to employment back into work. Quids-In is the money guidance arm promoting financial well-being and resilience, and launched a year or so later. So in a nutshell, what do? We support people on low incomes with money guidance, employment and digital skills. And one way we do this is through one-to-one support. And this can be face-to-face, or it can be remote over the phones or on video calls. We have various drop-ins in numerous locations. And from these, we offer light touch support, including dealing with urgent inquiries, but we also sign people up for our more comprehensive support. The latter being usually a 5 to 6 week program of weekly appointments, which starts with the Quids-In Money Health Check. These 25 questions act as financial resilience indicators and help the Quids-In coach to identify where further help is needed. Following on from the Money Health Check, the next step is usually a benefit check to make sure the individual is getting all that they are eligible for. And then the Quids-In coach and the individual will create an income and expenditure plan, which is a plan of action, all with the aim to maximize income, bring bills and outgoings down as low as possible, but also to ensure that the individual has the knowledge, money management skills and resilience going forward. We also run through the Money Health Check at the end of the programme to measure the distance travelled and monitor financial and non-financial gains, as well as improvements in financial resilience. Current average financial gains for our completers of our 5 to 6 week programme is over £1,300. We also run training programmes. 7 Signs is a 2-day group workshop helping people with barriers to employment get back into work and training. And 3Bs is a 1-day budgeting and income maximisation group workshop, which includes being safe online. We also publish deliberately accessible magazines and guides, which provide hints and tips on managing your money, maximising income, keeping costs down. As well as Quids-In itself, which is our flagship title, we have a guide to food, guide to universal credit, lieutenant's guide, budget planner, and heat, light, power and water. Plus, over the years, we've published other magazines such as Guide to Loan Sharks, and last winter our winter magazine aimed at pensioners in Bristol. These publications are distributed through our own drop-ins and posted to clients that we support remotely, but they are also available to other organisations to distribute to their clients, their tenants and their residents. We also have digital tools and resources, including the Quids-In Monthly Readers Club e-newsletter, and online self-help tools such as the Future-Proof Finance Quiz, the Budget Planner and the Benefit Checker. The Quids-In Professional Network is made up of over 5,000 stakeholders who share our vision of a world where people are able to provide for themselves and their family, where society understands and addresses everyone's needs, and where it does not cost more to be poor. As part of the network, professionals receive monthly e-newsletters with updates relevant to the sector, policy changes and so on, plus invites to training and to webinars such as this. A few years ago, the team got together for a staff day, and on the back of a discussion and brainstorming session, we came up with our pledge, which you can see here. We see you, we hear you, we are you. And this is for those that we are here to support. We know that people on low incomes are rarely listened to by policymakers, let alone seen. This pledge comes on the back of our peer programme, which gives those who access our service the opportunity to join our training programme called Elements, experts with lived experience supported by mentorship. The 12-week programme offers training, support, as well as paid work opportunities, and completers are invited to apply for roles within the organisation, as we know that they are best placed to support others who find themselves in a similar situation. Currently, the majority of our quids-in coaches and 3/4 of our team leader team have all come through our Elements programme. So that was a little, I'm just going to stop sharing. Bear with me. That was a tour of who we are. And now I'm going to hand over to Megan, who's going to talk us through where we are at, what is changing with ECA claimants and the move to UC. So over to you, Megan.
Okay, morning folks. So I'm just going to take you through where exactly we are with the process of moving people from the old benefits onto universal credit and start to have a bit of a think about what support we need to put in place and what could go wrong and what hopefully won't go wrong for the people we're supporting in this last little bit of moving people over onto universal credit. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. I've got 12 slides. It's going to look a bit weird now, don't panic. It's going to be okay. Okay. So where are we now? We're at the very last stages of moving people from the old benefit system onto the new-ish means tested benefit universal credit. So the majority of claimants have now been moved over. Everybody on tax credits, everybody on job seekers allowance, everybody, nearly everybody, everybody has come over onto universal credit. What we have now is we have the last blast where we're moving people on who are on the old employment and support allowance onto universal credit. This is it, we are in a very intense period of people moving over at the moment. So there's 83,000 letters being sent out every month to employment and support allowance claimants. These are people who, by nature of them being on that benefit, are living with sickness and disability. And these are also, at this point now, we've got people who may have been on ESA for a very, very long period of time. People who are on income-based ESA, that is ending, and they have to change onto universal credit. But we have got lots of claimants who are on contributory employment and support allowance. That is not being abolished. They can keep that benefit. It's just changing its name to New Style ESA. But if they're getting, for example, housing costs via the housing benefit system, those people on contributory ESA will also have to claim universal credit. So it's happening now and it's happening quickly. By the end of September, which is only a couple of months away, every single ESA claimant is going to get a managed migration notice that is an invitation to claim universal credit. And the DWP are saying that they're going to move everybody from income-related ESA to universal credit by March 2026. So there will be no more income-related ESA claimants out there after March 2026. So what are people going to see? People are going to get a letter that looks like the letter up on your screen now, coming through their letterboxes between now and the end of September, if they haven't had that letter already. Many of the people that you help, if they're sick and disabled and on ESA, may have had this letter already. And this letter gives them the minimum of 3 months to claim. And you can see circled on that letter that there's very clearly a date by which they need to make a claim for universal credit. It's a minimum of 3 months. So people have got a little bit of time to make a claim. It's really important that they do make a claim within that period. I'm going to be talking in a minute about the bad things that are going to happen if people don't make a claim within that 3-month period, and what we can do to encourage and support people to actually make a claim. Okay. But next I'm going to talk about what can we do now. We know that people who are sick and disabled on ESA are going to get this invitation. What do we need to consider to make sure that people are ready for getting this letter? Okay, so one thing we can consider is, are they getting the right benefits now? So any benefits that people are getting now will be protected when they move over onto universal credit. So it's important to make sure that people are getting the correct benefits now. That might be something that you need to send somebody to a benefits advisor to check out before they make a claim. For example, some people living on their own might have missed out on the severe disability premium. If they're not getting it now, if they do make a claim before they move for universal credit, then that extra money will come with them onto universal credit. We can prepare people, we can ask people to make sure that people understand that this is going to happen. There's no avoiding it. You know, you cannot escape making a claim for universal credit if you're on income related ESA. So prepare people that this is a reality and it is going to happen. And also get people to watch out for that letter. You know, it's not an exciting looking letter. Lots of people on ESA, if they're in the support group, really haven't had to engage very much with the DWP and might not be taking a lot of attention to what's coming through their letterbox. Just give people the heads up that they need to be thinking about checking their posts to seeing if they're getting one of these managed migration letters. Okay. People can consider timing their claim. So you've got 3 months to make a claim for universal credit when you get that letter. And you might want to time it to take into account, for example, if you've got a big bit of expenditure, you might want to get over that bump before you make a claim for universal credit. If you've got kids to look after and you've got the really quite expensive school holidays to worry about, you might consider making a claim at the end of the school holidays rather than the beginning of the school holidays. We know that people have to go for around 5 weeks from making a claim for universal credit to getting paid. So if people are ready for that and maybe put some money aside to help them cope with that 5-week wait, that would be really helpful. As an aside, I would mention that if people have been on ESA and housing benefit, they should actually get a 2-week run-on of those old benefits when they first make the claim. So that really helps with the 5-week wait. Okay. Right, what universal credit is really good at that the old benefit system was not quite as effective at is seeking out old overpayments. So lots of people, when they move over to universal credit and they get that lovely fresh new start on a new benefit, they suddenly find that old debts to the DWP start popping up. So old tax credits overpayments, old budgeting loans, things like that are suddenly popping up and being recovered. So it might be a good time before people move over to maybe get some debt advice around any other debts that they have, including their DWP debts, and just consider the fact that they may be asked to recover old overpayments that they might have forgotten about. when you claim universal credit, you ask for quite a lot of information. You have to prove your identity, which is actually not as challenging as you might think, but it's helpful for people to start seeking out, for example, their occupation contract, proof of any other income they've got coming in, which will help them make that claim. So what does the process look like? So when you get a migration notice, you've got at least 3 months to make a universal credit claim. They might give you a bit longer, but that date will be really clearly expressed on your letter. Okay, that date is the deadline date. You must make a claim for universal credit by that date. Okay, if you don't, bad stuff is going to happen, which we're going to explore in the next slide. What's really, really useful for you to know, folks, is that within that 3-month period, at any point, you can ask for an extension. So if somebody needs some extra time to make a claim, for whatever reason, you can ask for that 3-month period to be extended. The earlier in the process that you ask for an extension, the more likely it is to be granted. So if it's the day before the deadline day, you might be on a sticky wicket asking for an extension. However, I would suggest that you still ask and explain that good cause that that person's got. But the earlier that you ask for that extension, the better. Every single person who's now moving on to universal credit is living with disability or ill health. So that is a really good thing to hang your request for extra time on, you know, your good cause for asking for extra time. So yeah, there's a special managed migration helpline. You can ring that up and ask for extra time. The deadline day is clearly expressed on the letter. There is actually a final deadline day, which is 1 calendar month after the deadline day. So if the deadline day says it's the 15th of August, if you can actually get that claim in by the 14th of September, that extra calendar month, people will not lose out. That's not expressed on the letter, and it's probably something that you don't want to advertise to people, but it's worth knowing. If you are a little bit late after that deadline day, you can still get a claim in and not lose out up to 1 calendar month after the deadline day. That is called the final deadline day. It is not mentioned on the migration letter, but it's worth us knowing that all is not lost. If you claim a little bit late, you have got that extra month. So what happens if you miss that final deadline day? Like, we know that sometimes people are inspired to act when they have to. So people could not make that claim for universal credit, and on that day when their legacy benefits stop and there's no money in the bank, that might inspire them to get moving and make a claim for universal credit. I've definitely come across people who've done that. But if you miss that deadline, if you miss that final deadline, there's actually some quite serious implications for you as a claimant. Number one is your benefit stops. So that regular income that you might have been getting for years or months is suddenly going to stop, which is obviously going to cause people on low incomes significant problems. And obviously that is going to inspire people to make that claim for universal credit. The other thing that's going to happen, which is a big concern, is they're going to lose their disability status. So people on ESA have been through a process to get onto ESA. They've had to provide fit notes from their GP. They've had to fill in a great big questionnaire called the ESA 50. They've had to have a medical assessment either on the phone or face to face. That's quite a long drawn out process. It takes a minimum of 3 months. People find it quite stressful. And the outcome of that is they've got a disability status where they've either got limited capability for work or limited capability for work and work-related activity. If they claim universal credit within that 3-month period plus the secret extra month, they keep that disability status and they don't have to go through that big, horrible work capability assessment again. Their status will come with them onto universal credit. If they claim late, they will lose that disability status and they will have to start again from the beginning. Okay, so start again with fit notes, fill in a great big questionnaire, attending a medical. We don't want that for our people. People are also going to lose transitional protection. I always find a spelling mistake. I thought I'd check here, but never mind. So transitional protection means that whatever you were getting on the old benefit system will come with you onto universal credit. So if whatever you're getting on ESA is more than what the universal credit sums say you're going to get, if you claim in time, you can keep that extra money. And you will keep that until the day that universal credit comes up to meet what you were getting before on the old benefit system. People who miss the final deadline lose that transitional protection. So they could lose hundreds of pounds a month, especially if they're people who've been on disability benefit for a very, very long time. Okay, so lots of people who are on contribute to ESA, who may still have to claim universal credit because of their housing costs, might have got significantly higher amounts of benefits than what the universal credit sums say they should get. So they could lose hundreds of pounds a month. So that transitional protection is really important. Okay, and the other thing that people are going to lose, which I just can't spell, can I, is the 2-week run-on. Okay, that 2 weeks extra of housing benefit and ESA that you get in your first 2 weeks of universal credit, you're not going to get that if you don't claim by the final deadline date. So that is really, those are 4 really important reasons why people need to hit the deadline. You will get copies of these slides with this information on. I might try and put that spelling mistake on right here first. But I just wanted to give you the heads up about possibly too many different places where you can get help with the claims process. So the first port of call is the Universal Credit Managed Migration Helpline. So that is a different helpline from the main universal credit claims line that you might ring. There's a dedicated team to help people who are moving from ESA onto universal credit, and that telephone number is provided for you there. I've never rung it, to be honest, but it's there for you. That's a dedicated team. There's also a couple of services that might be useful. The National Citizens Advice Help to Claim service is a well-funded service that helps people who may struggle otherwise with that claims process. So they may struggle to claim online, not having the IT skills, then it might be very anxious about using the telephone to make a claim, because it is possible to make a claim for UC over the phone. Not recommended, but possible. Okay, the Citizens Advice Help to Claim service is there for you to help, and it's a really good service that will actually stay with people until their first universal credit pay date, making sure that everything that they need to do is done, including proving their identity, accepting their claimant commitment. Help to Claim will really help you with all those processes that you need to go through. It's also worth mentioning that in Wales, we've got a new Welsh Government Claims What's Yours service. I noticed that there's a few people who are not from Wales on the call, so that's no good to you, I'm afraid. But we've got a new Welsh Government service that helps people with any benefits. It's the aim of this service is to help bridge the gap where there's a significant amount of unclaimed benefits in the UK, and the rate of unclaimed benefit is actually higher in Wales than it is in the UK as a whole. So the Welsh Government have put money into providing a phone line where anybody can ring to check if they might be entitled to that benefit. And that's not just universal credit, it's any benefit. So it might be pension age benefits, it might be non-means tested disability benefits like PIP. The Claim What's Yours service will identify whether you can make a claim and help you through that claims process as well, including form filling. I have given them a quick ring. They answer the phone really quickly. They're really helpful. They'll do a benefit check for you for any kind of benefit. Okay, so that's the help that is available with the claims process. Just checking the time. Got 5 minutes. That's fine. Okay. Just heads up on a few points. This has been a really big problem within the move from ESA to universal credit, that you should not have to provide a fit note or go through the work capability assessments if you're moved from ESA to universal credit. And in the earlier days of moving people over, the DWP was making a lot of mistakes and asking people to restart that assessment again, that work capability assessment. You absolutely should automatically be placed in the UC equivalent of whatever group you are on in ESA. So people who are in the support group in ESA should go straight into the limited capability for work and work-related activity group, no questions asked. People who are in the main body of ESA should go into the limited capability for work group. So you should not be asked to provide fit notes. You should not be asked to fill in forms about your disability. You should just smoothly move over. I have given you here, I'm not going to read it out, and thank you to Benefits and Work who I stole this off, a little journal entry that you could put into somebody's journal if they're moving from ESA onto universal credit and they're worried about losing their status. It's a bit of a belt and braces thing, but I think it might be helpful if people are worried about it. It does seem to be going better where that status is being moved over, and those days where people were being asked to restart the work capability assessment, hopefully that's over. Just worth mentioning that it is possible to work both on ESA and on universal credit if you've got a sick and disabled status. So in the old ESA, there was something called permitted work, where you were allowed to earn a certain amount of money and it didn't affect your benefit. Okay. The rules for permitted work were different according to what group you were in. And sometimes it was time limited, sometimes it wasn't permitted work. That has been replaced by what's called a work allowance in universal credit. And a work allowance is money that you can earn each month, which doesn't affect how much universal credit that you get. So you can earn money if you've got a work allowance, and it's not going to reduce the amount of universal credit you get. Everybody who's got either limited capability for work or limited capability for work and work-related activity, which is everybody who's moved over from ESA, gets a work allowance. So if you pay housing costs, if you get help with your housing costs for universal credit, and you're been assessed as sick and disabled, you can earn £411 and it's not going to affect your universal credit at all. You can earn £411 every month, which is a great incentive for going into work and just trying out work. And the DWP is saying that if you try work and it's not working out for you, you can just come back again and it's not gonna, you're not going to get penalised. Okay, so sick and disabled people, it's worth trying work. If you don't pay housing costs, so maybe you're an owner-occupier, get housing costs from Universal Credit, so maybe you're an owner-occupier, or you're living with somebody else and you're not liable for rent, you can actually earn a stonking £684 before your Universal Credit is affected. So there's similar but slightly different rules for people who are sick and disabled in work, in ESA and Universal Credit. But there are quite generous work allowances on Universal Credit. Okay. It is worth mentioning that the DWP can provide additional support if they think that you've got complex needs. Okay. So this could be things like extra time. It is possible for the DWP to make a home visit. I've never experienced that other than the pension service, but they can do that. And they can also communicate in alternative formats if you need help with that. So obviously you as a support worker would have to give the DWP the heads up that somebody does have complex needs. And they should be able to put that additional support in. What should happen automatically is if people are within a week of their final deadline day, so they're coming to the end of the period when they can make a claim for Universal Credit and keep their status, the DWP have said that they will put somebody within the DWP on the case. So this is a complex case coach who is supposed to find out what's going on with that person. So they complete investigative work. So that could be trying to phone that person. There's stories of them trying to phone the social services department to find out about that person, possibly come out and knock on their door, trying to find out why that person hasn't made a claim for Universal Credit and see if they've got they need to put any extra help in to support that claimant. So if you're working with somebody who just has totally failed to make a claim, they might find in the last few days the DWP making extra efforts to try and contact them, because the DWP have come under quite a lot of criticism for just leaving people who are extremely unwell without any money because they failed to engage with the benefit system. Okay, let's look at your faces. Okay, that is my presentation. I hope that wasn't too overwhelming on the process and how it's working. But the key message is those letters are coming by the end of September, and I would just like us all to have our antennae up for those letters, because these are really our most vulnerable citizens who are getting those letters right now.
Absolutely. Thank you, Megan. That was really, really useful. And thank you for people that have contributed in the chat. We will come back to those comments as well. But right now I'd like to hand over to Jeff.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Megan. That was great. Yeah, in a second, I'm going to start the next part of the presentation. But just to follow on from what Megan was saying, this really is about understanding how vulnerable people are, and giving us more of an insight into their needs if we don't know them already, but in a kind of evidential way because of some research that we did through Quids In magazine. And bear with me while I just set up the presentation. So Lisa mentioned at the start when she was introducing the Quids In and Clean Slate that we have a pledge to the communities that we work with, those on low incomes, that we see you, we hear you, we are you. Obviously, we have people on our team now who are recruited with lived experience, but the we see you, we hear you is about recognising that people are not properly represented in the discussions around future policy, and service development, I think, and they're not properly listened to. So one of the things that we do within Quids In magazine is every 2 years we run a cost of living survey, which is on one hand a readership survey like any other magazine, understanding what it is that the readers want from us so that we can continuously improve the product. But also it's a de facto financial well-being and resilience survey because of the content of Quids-In being about money skills. So our latest survey started last November and ran through to the end of January. As with all surveys, we wanted to understand who our readership is, but also how they are coping with the cost of living, what level of confidence they have around managing their money, and to what extent they're getting what they need from Quids-In magazine. And when I say magazine, I also mean the email service. So the Quids-In Readers Club is an email service that works pretty much like the Money Saving Expert email service would work, but specifically targeted at people on low incomes, social tenants, unemployed people, and people who are claiming all kinds of benefits, usually through social landlords. So we circulate Quids-In both in print and digitally through social landlords, local authorities and support agencies. Our latest one reached 120,000 or more low-income households across the UK, and it generated responses of almost 1,100 from 1,100 participants, and literally 99% of those were online. What we've done with the reporting today, so as part of the way that we analyze the data that we receive, is to look at a specific group so we can describe their needs in particular. And the biggest group, obviously, where we're working with social landlords, is social tenants. So we've only included their responses for the reporting today, and this sample size is 878. So diving straight into what we discovered. Across all of the readers who responded to our survey, so social tenants of all kinds, 2/5 of them told us that they were feeling frightened, anxious or depressed on account of money worries. 42% of them had turned off heating despite being cold, and around a third were skipping meals. A fifth felt physically ill, 22%, and a good number had fallen behind with their bills, and half of those had fallen, so 30% had fallen behind with their bills, and half of those had fallen into rent arrears. As well as that, around 1 in 5 had struggled with debt repayments. About half, it was affecting the family life for around half of the people who responded, and 22% said they could not treat their children because of money constraints. A number of them had taken what we could call positive action, so 45%, so almost half across all social tenants who responded, had tried to reduce energy costs to keep control of the cost of living. 7% had cancelled broadband, almost 10% had asked for a prepayment meter, similar number had cancelled home contents insurance, and 1 in 5 had started using cash to budget more carefully as a result of money worries. But the reason that positive is in quotes there is because of there is a financial well-being and resilience implication for people cancelling broadband, especially if they're moving on to universal credit. Prepayment meters, although better regulated than they were, people are still exposed to certain controls that are not as beneficial as direct debit payments, and not having home contents insurance leaves people exposed to serious setbacks should the worst happen. In the context of today's webinar, looking at the transition from ESA to universal credit, I think this slide is probably the critical one. This was where we looked at the data we had and divided it into 3 groups by age and working status. So those who were beyond working age, those who were working age, but working, whether full-time or part-time, and those who were working age but felt unable to work. What we can see here is there's a really clear distinction between those 3 groups. Just 3% of those who are beyond working age reported facing serious financial problems. 14% of people who are working, but 20% of those who are working age but unable to work. And these would be where the majority of ESA claimants would be at the moment. So we want to look in more detail at how this particular group is coping with the cost of living already, And what we need to understand, they're already up against as they transition to a benefits system they're not used to, and that might create additional challenges. So compared to the, so 61%, almost 2/3 felt anxious, frightened or depressed on account of money worries, and that compares to 35% of the two other groups combined. 57% of people who are working age and not able to work were turning off the heating, compared to 40% of others, and they were twice as likely to skip meals, so 55% of them compared to 28% of people who are either in work or retired. Inevitably, I suppose, more of them then were made physically ill, 38% compared to 15% of others. And this is a group who are already feeling unable to work, most often because of long-term health conditions or disabilities. They were more often forced to take handouts, turning to food banks, fuel banks, or taking crisis grants, so 34% of them, compared to 12% of the other groups. You can see how stark these distinct differences are from this chart here. I've covered most of those points, but you can see how all these factors are leaning in the wrong direction for people who might be ESA claimants. So, as I said earlier, I think those figures from responses of all of our readers from the different groups disguise the challenges that this particular group has. So we can now see that those falling into arrears with bills was 45%, whereas it was 22% of the other groups. Rent arrears 21% versus 11% the rest, and 34% of people who are working age not able to work were struggling to keep up debt repayments. Twice as many had self-disconnected broadband, requested a prepayment meter, and turned to loan sharks. They're still out there and people are still using them. So 4% compared to 2% of the other groups. 2/3 of people were missing out on family events, and a fifth had arguments with family and friends on account of money worries. Again, this chart really just reiterates those stark differences between the groups. And I've only put the two groups here. We could have separated those out into the three groups. So separating out those who are working and those who were beyond working age, which have shown more of the picture. But for today's webinar, it's more about focusing on people who might be on the ESA already. The same here. The only question here that bucked the trend was about performance at work, but obviously people who felt unable to work, they may be reporting on when they were able to work and now they're not able to work, and obviously that would be different for this group. There were some similarities between the groups on certain issues. Similar numbers were moving to cash to budget more carefully. Similar numbers were using comparison services and trying to reduce energy use, which is interesting. And then we also asked, so in addition to questions about how money worries had impacted the way that people sort of manage their lives day to day, we also borrowed the indicators, the financial resilience indicators that we asked within Clean Slate's Money Health Check process. So the Money Health Check uses a quiz format asking 25 financial resilience indicator questions, and we published those in the survey. And this gave us a sense of how people's financial well-being now and their resilience for the future. And these questions threw up more of the same sort of indicators about the particular challenges that people who are working age and not able to work were facing. They were less in control of their money. The indicators showed that they were less likely to know how much money was coming in each month and how much was going out. They had fewer savings to fall back on, and were less able to readily access their ID documents. So those having savings and accessing ID documents are specifically relevant to the transition and migration to universal credit. So that migration is going to be more problematic if those things aren't in place. Just 1 in 3 of those respondents who were working age and not able to work knew where they could find help if they had financial problems. So again, the chart tells the story where people are less able to, people who are working age and not able to work are less able to, they're less financially, financial well-being is less than the other groups, and their financial resilience for the future against all indicators was diminished. This final chart relates less to the universal credit issues that we're looking at today, but people are always interested in this. We've run this survey every 2 years since 2012, and so we actually have some longitudinal data to compare. Too complicated a picture to go into right now and not helpful for the particular topic, but just to show you that this is the kind of data that we have available. We're able to show, so on these charts, each of the groups of columns on the left hand side is the average number of people who would replace a washing machine with a credit card, for example. So just taking the first indicators for now. 13% in 2015 has become 14% now, but amongst people who are working age and not able to work, it's 29%. Borrowing from friends or family, it's a similar picture all the way through, but it doesn't really tell a story that I've been able to kind of articulate properly here yet with in terms of what this tells us about the needs of people who might be on ESA and migrating to universal credit. But we have the data to look at, and we're going to be exploring what that means over time. I think that the key one that I probably worry about most is the payday loan indicators on the right hand side. So what was 3% of people turn into a payday loan company in 2015 is now 2%, but amongst those who are working age and not in full-time, not able to work, it's 6%. So they are more exposed to illegal lending, money lending. So I think that's the end of the data presentation. Lisa.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. That's great. A lot of data there, but just so interesting, and there's still so much that we're going to be kind of drawing from that data as well. So yeah, thank you. Okay, so Q&A questions. I've certainly got some that I'd like to ask, but we'd also like to open it up to the floor. Bear with me while I just bring this up. So please hand up or write in the chat and let us know if you have any questions. There's quite a lot of comments in the chat already and quite a few questions. So should we start with those?
Yeah, I've had a little look at what's in the chat box. There's some really interesting points made. So should we deal with those first?
Go for it, Megan. Yeah.
Okay. So there's a little bit of debate around help to claim and making an online claim versus making a telephone claim. So the Citizens Advice Help to Claim service is great, and it can help you either do it over the phone or make a claim online. We would always suggest if people possibly can make an online claim, either independently with our helpers money or with our helpers money guiders, or via the Citizens Advice Help to Claim service. That might be so much better for them in the future, because it's so much easier to log in and see what's going on with your claim, see when you're going to get paid, communicate with the DWP via journal rather than make a telephone claim, which means every time you need to communicate with the DWP, you need to ring them up, which takes ages and is a bit of a lottery according to who you can get. I have definitely been really pleasantly surprised how well people have managed their online DWP claims via their smartphones. Those people who do have those facilities, you know, it's much better to do it online. Okay. Tina, thank you for getting me to check my help to claim number. I will also put the English number into the slides before I send them out, because I have got some people from England here as well.
Yeah.
So with complex needs, yeah, I think if you tell the managed migration team, that should work. Further down the line, once they're actually universal credit claimants, you should be able to tell either the work coach or via the journal about complex needs, and they can pin people as having complex needs. So anytime anybody from the DWP looks at their claim or their UC account, that pin is up there on the front page. Right. And Nicola has sent us some really concerning information. I was pretty horrified reading what you're saying, Nicola, but it does make sense. What Nicola is saying is she's seeing a very steep ramp up in the amount of error and difficult errors made by the DWP and difficulties that people are facing. So she's saying that people are not able to verify their identity over the phone because there's big delays on it. She's seeing mistakes. This is what I was saying, it wasn't happening anymore, but Nicola's seeing mistakes where that status, that disability status, isn't coming through with people onto universal credit from ESA. She's seeing ESA, which is supposed to stop when universal credit starts, continue to be paid, which means that overpayments are being raised. Yeah, so it sounds really pretty awful, the experience that Nicola's tenants are having. And it does make sense because we've had this massive increase in the number of new claims. The government actually were saying that they were going to send out all the managed migration letters between now and December, and then quite suddenly they brought it forward to September, which means the amount of claims going through at the moment are massive. So I'm interested if anybody's having experiences that are similar to Nicola, with a lot of mistakes being made in these new universal credit claims for ESA claimants. It's very disappointing, to be honest. Yeah.
Nicola also talked about you've approached your local MP. I don't know if Nicola, if you want to come in, but you've approached your local MP.
Hi.
Hi, Nicola.
Hi. Yeah, we've gone to the partnership manager, and because of the volume of claimants that we've seen, specifically because we're a large housing association with over 3,500 properties, we've never had an issue before when we migrated with tax credits. There was never an issue. But all of a sudden now, about 6 to 8 weeks ago, they said they were going to ramp up the amount of claimants they were pushing through. I work out of the local job centre near enough every week, and I spoke with them, and they said that there's delays at their Bangor office. The case managers can't cope with the volume of claims that they're having coming through at the moment. I've supported 6 tenants recently on managed migration for ESA, and all of mine have had issues with their payments being wrong. They're verifying their identity, so they suffer with complex needs, mental health. We set them up, I reassure them. They say that they'll be contacted 2 to 3 days by telephone because we're not able to verify because they haven't got a passport, driving license, or anything like that. And then that's not happening. One of my claimants has waited over 20 days, and even to the point where they said that they would be unable to verify him until after his UC payment was due. It's been dreadful recently. So we've taken, the route of speaking to the local MP. We've sent over the cases to them, and we've contacted the partnership manager as well. So we've taken a 2-pronged approach to see if we can get things resolved, because it's causing significant distress to my clients. They're messaging me saying, I've got no money for food. We've already exhausted, in Wales, we have the discretionary assistance fund. We've already exhausted that, so we can't go to that. Luckily, MHA does have a pot of money put aside for tenants in hardship, so we're able to issue some shopping vouchers, fuel vouchers, but it's just not good enough at the moment. So I would recommend, if anyone else is seeing issues such as this, that it is fed back to them so that they either reduce the amount of claimants that they are pushing through, because it's clear that they can't cope at the moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Jeff, you're going to come in about our new service in Monmouthshire, yeah.
Yeah, such as it is. So Nicola just put in the chat asking you to email me about some of this stuff. We have just, Clean Slate has just received a commission from DWP to work with 10 whole people in Monmouthshire, but it is over a period of a number of weeks. So we're expecting to be able to make a bit of a difference for those small numbers at least, but it would be really helpful to know more about what's happening on the ground, not just there, but obviously across Wales. I'm seeing that lots of other messages coming onto the chat as well. This being obviously, if Bangor office is behind, then it's going to affect a lot more than just local to Monmouthshire. But the more information we have, and we've got this relationship with DWP there, let's see if we can do something. So it'll be really good to just pick up on a very practical basis.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
No worries.
Great. Megan, was there anything else you wanted to pick up in the chat, or did anyone else want to come in at this stage? Just put your hand up and then...
I'm reading the chat. Yeah, it's really quite concerning that so many mistakes are being made. I think there is a little bit of a confusion around income-related ESA and contributory ESA. So just to give you the heads up that if somebody's on contributory ESA, there might be some people on contributory ESA who haven't worked and haven't made national insurance contributions. Some people who were on the old incapacity benefit, or before that there was something called the severe disablement allowance, because they became incapacitated in youth, were given contributory ESA without making any contributions. So they could see that continuing into their universal credit claim. So people saying that people are continuing to get ESA paid into their universal credit claim, it could be two things. It could be DWP have made a mistake, or it could be contributory ESA. Okay.
Great.
Susanna.
Susanna, yeah. Susanna, you've got your hand raised.
Hi, I've put quite a lengthy message in the chat, so I thought I'll come in and explain a little bit. But you answered the second part of my question, actually, because that is there, by the way, any way to tell which one it is, whether it's a mistake or contributory, without contacting ESA? Because I've tried numerous times over the last couple of months, and the wait lines are over an hour, which is just not.
Yeah.
With,
Don't think there is, unless that person can dig out any letters. Their entitlement letter, possibly not. No.
Yeah, but I think that the essence of my question was, so I'm supporting a tenant who unfortunately was referred to me a month after his migration deadline passed, and because he's got some sort of insurance payment, he does not qualify for any UC without the transitional protection, so he lost out on quite a lot. Now he's got severe brain damage. He's got 24/7 carers. I've called up UC the first time I met him, and they said, "Oh, but we've extended the deadline 5 times." So, sorry, the migration team, not UC. They've extended the deadline 5 times, but obviously he's still not able to do that without support. So, I mean, I popped a message in the journal asking them to consider. Looking again because of the circumstances. I've also put a complaint in saying, well, they haven't offered the visit or haven't liaised with the adult social care team, which I think is within their remit. So I'm trying from that angle, but I don't know if there's anything else that I can do, or do you think if there's any chance of success? Or
I think there's a high chance of success. So he failed to put in his application by the final deadline date, did he? Because they extended it and he applied late. But he did contact the DWP on many occasions, or somebody did on his behalf. I would in that instance contact specialist, look for specialist benefit advice around that, because it sounds like there should be somewhere to go regarding that help being requested for somebody who evidently has complex needs and it not being protected, not being offered.
Okay, brilliant, thank you.
I would definitely I would be a bit of a dog with a bone with that, Susanna, because
you have intense. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Susanna. Thank you, Megan. anything else in the chat? Anyone else that wants to come in at this point? No. Okay, why don't we move on? I've got a few questions for Jeff and Megan. So why don't we move on to those? But as I say, please put your hand up or write in the chat if you would like to come in or ask further questions or get further kind of detail about what we're talking about. But so I think my first question is, what are the common likely pitfalls for ESA claimants migrating to UC? I don't know who would like to pick that up.
Yeah, I'll go first, and then I think there's some stuff that Megan's better placed to cover than I am. I mean, from our point of view at Quids In, so our Universal Credit Guide focuses on the 3 Bs. So the 3 Bs are banking, budgeting, and being online. The concept was designed in partnership or co-designed with Claimants in the very early days of Universal Credit, who were saying that they didn't realize they had to have certain kinds of bank accounts. They didn't have money in those bank accounts, they didn't have savings, and they didn't know how much money was coming in or going out, and they weren't necessarily online, or they were online with a smartphone with a big crack down the screen. And so the pitfalls that we focused on are around those 3 things. So it's easy for me to remember when I'm doing things like this, 3 Bs. It's a reminder to me, but the idea is that it's easier to remember and cluster bits of advice for universal credit claimants as well. So they're the key things, helping people with making sure they've got the right bank account, that they can manage it, that they're online and have the basic skills to be able to manage their claim, and I guess their bank account if it's a new one they're taking out, and then being able to plan how they're going to manage their money through a month paid in arrears. So all those changes from the old benefit system that suddenly confront people and catch them off guard, which is why we produced the Universal Credit Guide. And the other thing that sort of comes up, and it's one of our 25 financial resilience indicators that I always like talking about because it surprises people a bit, is one of our questions is, do you open your post every day? And the reason that we include that is because people they're not necessarily forthcoming about any arrears that they're in, or debt that they're in, but every debt advisor will tell you how many people turn up with a big bag of unopened post. But by asking that question, we can start to engage with people's habits that reveal that maybe something is up. And to be fair, once we've gone through these questions and we've got advisors with lived experience asking these questions, so it's very easy to establish a rapport and build that trust. But once they're talking to you about their money, they'll tell you everything. But that key question about people not opening their post really gives us it's a red flag for us. So it's a really good question to ask. Obviously, if people are in debt and arrears already, then it's even more complex, that migration. I think the things that occurred to me, but I think that Megan is better placed to talk about, is the experience that has already been gained from people from other groups migrating to universal credit. So those on tax credits, but also ever since UC was launched, the number of people who faced delayed or failed claims from the start. And that's going to be particularly tricky with people who have long-term health conditions and disabilities, and also things like cognitive overload, because there's a lot going on for these people anyway. And then they have to deal with that as they sort of migrate to universal credit. Megan, do you feel, have I given you the hardest bits of that question?
Okay, so we're talking about pitfalls, and I actually came into this session with my golden message being, make sure people make a claim in time. But hearing the feedback from the group about really quite significant mistakes that the DWP are making, my other golden rule is going to be check people's first statement to make sure that their universal credit is being paid and calculated correctly. I'm really pleased that Joanne, you've put in details of the national partnership managers, because that's really, thanks Joanne, that's really useful information for everybody who's having any kind of difficulties with universal credit. So it looks like people are having big difficulties with ESA being continued to pay when it shouldn't be, with claims not being processed in time, with even still with that disability element not coming over. So I think we need to be watching the DWP like hawks at the moment, and challenge them if they're not doing their universal credit transition correctly, because it sounds like they're not. I'm actually really disappointed. Looking at what you're saying around your experience of a managed migration at the moment. Michelle.
Michelle.
Hi.
Hi.
So I sort of been on some training and like the webinars from the benefits training company, and they've released information about there's supposed to be this enhanced support journey for ESA claimants. So if they haven't made a claim, the DWP is supposed to send it to specialist teams. There's whole guidance about what's happening. So I'm sort of wondering, I guess these problems are for people that have made the claim and that those issues have gone on. But if that's happening, I can't see the enhanced support journey being any better. We haven't had any clients really that have, I think the issues are going to come later. After they've migrated everybody, so probably into next year when ESA is basically stopped. I think we'll see the more of the problems and these people that have been missed, and the ones that haven't made the claim haven't reached out and have just tried to manage. But I don't know if anyone's had any experience with this enhanced support journey, or if everybody that's come into contact with people have just tried to make the claim at that time. But yeah, I think it's worth as well saying that making sure that people get advice as well. And like you say, there's one thing of making the claim, but there's also the advice and understanding the benefits that they're on now and making sure that everything is correct at that time. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. You've talked about the enhanced support journey. I talked about the complex case coach who's supposed to contact vulnerable claimants if they haven't made a claim. Has anybody ever got any in the room got any experience of this working and this happening? It'd be great to hear that it has. Geraldine, great if you're going to tell me about a wonderful service from the DWP.
No, don't be silly. No chance. Not open hell. No, it's gone. It's all gone to pot recently, unfortunately. As Michelle was saying earlier, it's really, really bad at the minute. I have had a few people who've had contact from the enhanced support people or whoever they are, but unfortunately, these vulnerable claimants don't want to deal with somebody they don't know, and they get quite frightened. And they just want their normal support workers to help them with their claims, and unfortunately their normal support workers probably aren't very qualified in benefits, etc. So they do their best, bless them, but yeah, and then I'm picking them up from a landlord's point because we're not getting direct payments, or I can see things are going wrong from my end, so I'll then get involved. And yeah, it's the same as what other guys are saying, that they're well, I've had visiting officers go to do ID checks. I've had a couple of those, but it's taken so long to get that into place that they are then missing their first payment because the claim isn't set up in time. They haven't got the transitional element. Their ESA is still being in payment for that entire month where they've been waiting for somebody to go out and do an ID check with them. And quite frankly, at the moment, it's appalling. It's really bad.
Yeah, I'm quite shocked from what I'm hearing in this webinar about the really negative experiences we're having. And it seems to me that the root cause of this is the DWP like giving themselves a deadline, shortening their deadline by 4 months all of a sudden. You know, that's it's
well,
not,
I
not
put
a doable thing, is it?
I had one person who I put in the chat who'd actually rang immediately and made a claim over the phone on the dedicated phone line, made the claim. That claim was never actually set up for whatever reason. Thankfully, I became made aware that she'd thought she'd made the claim, got involved, and we've now read she wasn't at the end of the deadline date. So, but yeah, lots and lots of mistakes.
Yeah.
Not good. We have asked our partnership manager for if there is a contact for that dedicated team, if we can contact them to say, look, this person's struggling, can somebody go out and visit them? But we've come up that, well, our partnership manager's come up against a brick wall and can't find any contact details for them. So
Yeah, I haven't got any direct contact details for that enhanced support team at all. No. Okay, I think it's really interesting what you're saying around people not wanting to seek support from somebody they don't know, because that's one of our key learnings at Clean Slate, is that having a trusted messenger to share information with you, and having somebody that you know and trust, is really key to moving on. And having to deal with somebody who's complete stranger is really difficult for a lot, particularly these particularly vulnerable cohort of people we've got now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Steve's got his hand up. Steve, are you there?
Yeah, but I don't know why I've come up as Steve, because I'm actually Nicola.
Oh, sorry, Nicola.
So yeah, we work with homeless clients, Cornerstone, and we work out of Caerphilly and Merthyr boroughs. And most of our clients are what you would class as very vulnerable people. They've usually hit rock bottom when they come to us. And I've recently had a client, in all fairness, they did send her out a couple of reminder letters. Obviously she's got nowhere to keep paperwork or anything like this. They're all crumpled up and things, you know, but she can't read and write. She's alcoholic, homeless. I got involved because of a drug and alcohol worker. She asked me to help the claim, but apparently they had tried making a claim twice over the phone, and both times they've got cut off. So they'd thought at one point that it was registered, and then it turned out it wasn't. And then we made the claim for her. Now, I was told by her drugs worker that she had an extension until the 1st of May. So when she contacted me, I said, right, let's get it done as quickly as possible. It was towards the end of April. And I said, I'll come and see it at the job centre tomorrow. Went there to go and set up the claim. And in all fairness, the job centre was quite helpful. They said, oh, we'll verify your ID straight after you've finished now, so she doesn't have to come back in. And they used her bank card and her court letter regarding a magistrate's court fine as proof of ID. But when she wanted to know, she was due to have her last ESA payment on the Saturday. And she said, well, will I still get that? I know that there's usually somebody with access to an ESA claim on the screen. And they wouldn't have told us that unless I'd known that. And she said, oh, we can't check that. And then when I said, oh, there is usually somebody who can view ESA, they checked and they said, oh, that was paid into your account last night and your account was closed yesterday. So, of course, she hadn't realised she'd gone and spent the money on drink and then didn't have the money then to last her. And obviously, even though we can try and apply financial hardship payments, they're not allowed to be spent on alcohol or cigarettes. So, of course, then that left us with a problem then that she couldn't just go without alcohol completely, because otherwise she'd have had seizures and things like that and whatever, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So she sounds like a particularly vulnerable claimant.
She was never contacted by anybody from, and she would be somebody definitely who would have been vulnerable. She would have had to have started the process again. And you know, she's lost PIP in the past because of not getting mail or things like that and whatever. And but she's not been contacted by anybody from the DWP.
Yeah, people have talked about in the chat. There's so much in the chat, and we're running out of time quite rapidly. But people have spoken in the chat about being on the phone for absolutely ages trying to get through to the UC helpline. My experience of the UC helpline is it's extremely variable who you get. You know, sometimes I have had people who've been incredibly helpful and knowledgeable and have been able to take actions to help that person really quickly. And I've also had people who really don't seem to know anything about universal credit or the benefit system or anything, and were not able to help at all. Sometimes it's worth just ending the call and trying again with somebody else. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you both. We've only got about 5 more minutes, so I think if nobody else has any questions they'd like to ask, I might move on to one of mine, which is how do we engage people? I think this is kind of obviously is crucial, and I feel like this is coming up kind of through the questions and through the comments as well. But Jeff, can I hand over to you with that?
Yeah, I noticed when I mentioned cognitive overload, that got picked up in the chat. Something we see a lot, and it's understandable. And anyone who's been in, debt and arrears, let alone everything else that the group we're talking about might be having to contend with, will recognise everything seems overwhelming. And so the approach that we take at Clean Slate when we have our money coaches working with people is to try and keep the information bite-sized. Obviously, being Quids In, we have the publishing arm, so we can drip feed information over time, but in small chunks, so that people can start to just think about the one small thing that you might do this week, for example. And we tend to start with the quick wins. So one small thing you might do might not feel like a small thing from a claimant's point of view, but doing a benefit check, for example, or digging out some paperwork that would support an ID verification. And we just start with those things. The good thing about a benefit check, or maybe something like, find out how much you're paying for broadband, and they come back to our money coach, and then we'll look at show someone how to use a comparison website, or talk to them about social tariffs on broadband. It's a relatively small step that immediately can generate some financial wins, which then starts to build confidence in the process. And obviously, each little incremental step towards having improved financial well-being broadens that bandwidth to think about something bigger. And ultimately, that sort of funnel going the opposite way. So starting with a small thing and planning and sort of planning out, is we can end up talking to people about their sort of bigger and longer term options, whether that's health related or looking at employment opportunities, but starting with the things that might be just an extra tenner. And someone mentioned about the hardship vouchers or whatever. We actually have an incentive, a high street voucher, so a food voucher, to engage with our service, even though we're generating sort of financial gains of an average £1,300. People will engage if they can keep food on the table this week. So we recognize that, and we try and it's not about leaning into it. It's just about understanding that people this is where people are at the starting point. So I think for us it's engaging on that basis. Megan, this is you look at sort of like nudge principles and that kind of behavioral theory to kind of help people, don't you, sometimes?
Yeah, and I think that when you think about behavioural insights around moving to universal credit, you'd look at what is happening around that person. And around that person, the majority of people on means test benefits are now on universal credit. Because when we started the Universal Credit Journal, people had an awful reputation, universal credit. People were very, very frightened of it. But now the fact that people's friends and neighbours and aunties and uncles might now be universal credit claimants, that's something that I might use to reassure people. And I also might say, I've helped lots of other people through this journey. The majority of the people that I help are now on universal credit. However, I feel that I'm somewhat less reassuring, having read what's happening in Monmouthshire, particularly, where things are going really badly at the moment with universal credit. But yeah, I would be using the message, lots of people on universal credit. It's going really well for lots of people, and just reassure people that that is what everybody around them is claiming now.
Yeah, anyone who wants to keep the conversation going around the practical responses we can make to try and bridge that gap between the service DWP is struggling to offer and the needs of benefit claimants, that is absolutely what Clean Slate and Quids In is here for. So you can either get in touch. I've put my email address in the chat, or put yours in the chat, and we'll keep this conversation going. We'll try and there will be information sent out from I think Caitlin will be sending out a follow-up to this with a link to the recording of this webinar, but we'll include our information in there again so that we can pick this up, see if we can sort of pool resources maybe.
I would suggest that if you haven't done so already, you grab Joanne's link to the Directory of Partnership Managers, because that is a really good way to go to escalate things if you're the people you're helping are having difficulties with their new universal credit claims.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot for that, Joanne. That's really helpful. Please grab that. I have got a couple of edits to make on my PowerPoint, particularly putting the English number in. So I will do that and then send it to Caitlin to share.
And a Scottish one as well, Megan.
I'm Scottish.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And any of the links that have been shared that I think will be useful, or any of the kind of information that's been included in the chat, we'll include that in the follow-up as well. So we'll make sure that it's all in there. And there were also some questions that I don't think we've managed to get to. We will address those in the follow-up as well. Sorry, this has been, we've run over time, so I'm really sorry. We have to bring this to a close. It's been really full, I think.
Please do the feedback sheet. Use the feedback link.
Yeah, and use the feedback link, which Caitlin has just shared again in the chat. So please fill that out. Contact details are in the chat, but we will include as much as we can in the follow-up information as well. But thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found it useful. There's been a lot of information there. And we hope to see you all again soon. We do actually run UC training for frontline workers as well, and I'll include that in the follow-up information, but the details are on our website, and it is run by the lovely Megan. So please join us for that. And also we have a guide to universal credit for claimants as well. Hope to see you all again soon. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.